I'm Bruce Slutsky. I'm part of the Casey Stengel chapter of SABR, and we have two very distinguished guests tonight, Bill Nowlin and David Fischer, who wrote the book Red Sox versus Yankees, Hometown Experts Analyze, Debate, and Illuminate Baseball's Ultimate Rivalry. Bill is very distinguished in SABR. He has written over 1,000 papers from SABR alone. He keeps me busy on the games project. I review many of his manuscripts. Everybody makes mistakes, so he's very minimal. He's written several books: Ted Williams at War and Love, Dirty Water, The Standells, and the Improbable Victory Anthem of the Boston Red Sox. He was one of the founders of Rounder Records. He's also written a book on Tom Yorkie. David Fischer is also a sports author, specialized in the Yankees. One of his books is the New York Yankees of the 1950s, Mantle, Stengel, Berra, and a Decade of Dominance. So we certainly have two excellent speakers. So who wants to start?
I'll show you the book we did. This is the book that Sports Publishing approached us both and asked us about doing a book that they knew about us from. Jason Katzman knew about both of us separately from having worked on different books, and suggested we get together and do a book on the rivalry, and hosted a session where we both met for the first and only time, actually, and we came out unbruised, but it was a brief meeting and we decided to do the book, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
We did have a lot of fun doing the book. We met in person that first time to agree to do it, but then we had, as you can imagine, countless telephone conversations and email correspondence back and forth, because the way the book is laid out, was described to us by our editor like two sports fans at a sports bar talking about their favorite team. And the idea was we were going to pick the best Boston Red Sox at each position and the best Yankee at each position, and then have a debate about why, not only explain why we chose the players we chose, but then to critique or comment or compliment one another on the others' selections. And that's where I think we had the most fun debating, because, to be honest, many of the players I never saw in person or even on television. But that's the beauty of baseball, as you all know, is you can compare generations as best you can, because the game, the bases haven't changed. In how many years? One of you know exactly how many years.
What hasn't changed?
The length of the bases. And
oh no, but the size of the bases has changed.
Yes.
Just in the last year.
I think people are approving of some of these changes. I'm not so sure. I do like the change of the with the base path towards first base. They expanded that line, because boy, that was the most frustrating umpire's call, I think, in the game.
I think many people appreciate the games being shorter. Certainly Red Sox Yankees games were having a tendency to go about 3 hours and 40 minutes there.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference.
Yeah, Joe West is not crying about the pace of the Yankee Red Sox games right now. I remember he made a comment about 4-hour games.
There was a game I went to, I think it was in 2022. I think it was 2022. It was a Red Sox Yankees game at Fenway Park, and the game got over. They announced that when the game was over, that tonight's game lasted 2 hours and 51 minutes. And there was a big round of applause in the press box. Oh. And that was because it was under a 3-hour game, when they usually were about 3 hours 20, 3 hours 30 for Red Sox Yankees games. There's supposed to be no cheering in the press box, but this wasn't for one side or the other. It was for the pace of the game.
Yes, my deadline will be made so much easier. They were cheering.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun doing this book. We also picked our what we thought was the best team of all time for each of the two teams. And then a company that's a computer simulation company ran our two teams against each other to see how they would have fared. And it was just a lot of fun. The game, that book's about 4 or 5 years old, though. Of course, a lot of things have happened since that time. The Yankees right now, of course, are on their way to the first 162-0 season. We'll see
I
how
think
that works
I think
out.
I could like this team the way they're playing so far.
I think Red Sox fans are also surprised at the team this year. There's so much negativity in the Boston market among Red Sox fans in general about this year's team. And then yet they've got the first 5 pitchers have, I think they've each gone 5 or 6 innings, which these days is pretty good, considered it pretty good anyhow. And I think they've given up 5 earned runs over 5 games. So that's really impressed people too as a start.
Yeah, a very close friend of mine lives in Worcester, and he is saying that the media has just been killing ownership and the front office for I guess the lack of moves that they made in the off season.
Right. So we'll see where it goes, of course. But we do have a new SABR book that just got announced this week, and I just got my copy at a little after 5 o'clock today. It just finally arrived. It's on the 2004 Red Sox. You remember that team, David? It's just a lot of fun. Bios of everybody that was on the team that year, and sort of recounting the story of that season. It started as a Boston chapter project, and then the SABR National decided to pick it up.
Yeah, 2004 is an important year for some of us. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but the lasting memory I have is in Game 3 of the ALCS. I believe the Yankees scored 19 runs, something.
19-8.
Just a blowout. I remember my brother was already dancing, popping champagnes. We're going back to the World Series, and I said, "God, no! These are the baseball gods. This is too many runs. They should have stopped at 10.
Well, yeah,
This is too many runs. This is not good."
I was at that game. That was a home game at Fenway Park, and I went with a friend, and we both left our 12-year-old sons at home by themselves. And so when it got to 17-6, I don't remember where that was, about maybe the 6th inning or so, it was already 17-6. And you wouldn't think somebody would leave a playoff game, but I thought this is the time to get responsible. And I didn't want to see the end of this game anyhow. So we left and went home. And my son was due to go to the game with me, Game 4, the next night. That one I blew. I made a deal with him. I said, "You don't really want to go to this game, do you?" And he said, "No, I don't," because he's not really a baseball fan. And I said, "Well, I don't want to take you to the game and see the Red Sox get blown out again. So how about we'll go on a trip to Africa next summer? I'll book this trip and we'll go to with this group that I knew of." And so he said, "Okay." So I missed Game 4, but I watched it on TV.
Was that the 12-inning game?
Yeah, and then the next night, I think I can't remember how many innings they were right now, but it was the Red Sox did come from behind and won it, and then I was there for Game 5 when it went even longer, and they won that one too. Again, David Ortiz, 2 games in a row, extra inning.
That must have been the 12-inning game. Yeah, I can't remember details. I just remember poor Paul Quantrill probably appearing in his 85th game of the season, trying his best. I was thinking, how did it all go wrong? In Game 4, Kevin Millar has that leadoff at bat, and he works a walk off Mariano Rivera, who hadn't walked a batter in something like the last 3 or 4 playoff series. So right there, it was something that was very odd that was happening. Dave Roberts pinch runs, he steals the base, and I believe was it Bill Miller who got
Yes, yeah.
the hit up the middle. I can still see Mo skipping out of the way of the ball as it came up through the box.
Mm.
Bill Miller was a player on the Red Sox that I always liked. That I would say I would want this guy on my team.
Yeah.
He was, whenever there's a no hitter that's happening, who's going to break it up? I'd say if it was the Red Sox, a guy like Bill Miller is the guy who's going to break it up. I just liked his grit. So, I tip my cap to him. And again, things blur. I don't know which game this is, but I knew that the Yankees were not going to win the series when there's a man on first, 2 outs. Tony Clark was the first baseman because I believe Giambi was hurt for quite some time. I don't think he ever played in that series, but Tony Clark, batting lefty, hit a ball down the right field line.
Yeah.
The man on first would easily score, but that Fenway fence in right field is so low, and it bounced into the stands. Grounds rule double. Guy has to stop at third by rule.
Yep.
Next batter made an out. And I said, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen for us.
Well, it certainly changed things around because, I grew up in the 1950s. I'm old enough that I grew up in the 1950s and 1960s. And we just assumed the Red Sox were always going to lose. Reading history, I mean, they lost the one game. From after Babe Ruth left, after 1918, it took them a few years, like 86, until they won another World Series. But they came so close so many times. There were 4 times they got to the World Series, lost every one of them in Game 7. And they just pushed it to the edge. And the same thing happened in 2003 in the ALCS against the Yankees. It was looking not too bad, but then gets to Game 7 and extra innings, Aaron Boone. They won that one too. And most Red Sox fans just figured, well, that's just life. I mean, we were inured to that. That's the way it was. It just was something that wasn't really going to change. And when it did, the next year, 2004, I think a lot of us didn't believe it. There's a saying about, pinch yourself. I literally did that a couple of times, waking up, 4:30 in the morning. Wait, I must have dreamed this. And I told myself, why you should pinch yourself. And I said, okay, I'll just do it for real. And yeah, I guess they really did do it.
I've never thought of this until just now, but the Red Sox always had, I think, talent on the field. But it wasn't until Francona was in the dugout as the man. I always felt that the Red Sox had subpar managers. If it was a good strategic thinker, he couldn't communicate. If he was a communicator, he was a bumbling fool. Reputation. I don't know. That's just me from the outside. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, there was something that happened, whether it was a curse or whether it was just in the air, or it was just most likely simply bad luck a lot of the time, that Red Sox fans really felt that this particular aspect of life was unfair and that it was never going to happen. The Red Sox were never going to win. In this book, actually, that I tell the story of a woman named Catherine Jemmy, who I visited in a nursing home, I think the year before, I think 2003. She was at that point 108 years old. She remembered going to a game. She went to a game in 1918 and did see Babe Ruth play for the Red Sox. And then she was brilliant. I mean, she was a huge Red Sox fan. I went to visit her in this nursing home. And if the Red Sox were, as they are tonight, on a West Coast road trip, she would go to bed around 6 o'clock and have the staff wake her up at 9 o'clock so she could watch the game on television and then go back to sleep again. And she was talking to me about how, notice how that Veritek, the pitchers never shake him off. And compare that to Sammy White or whatever, she was, and then, so fortunately she lived. And so after they won it in 2004, I got back in touch with her, and she was, she said, now I can die happy. And she took over a year after that. She lived at least another full year afterwards. So she really got to savor it some. But, what do you think, David, these days? I was thinking about this a couple of hours ago. Is the Red Sox Yankees rivalry, does it still exist in any really intense way? Many of you probably go to games at Yankee Stadium. I don't wear insignia when I go to games anyhow, but I certainly wouldn't have wanted to in 1999 or something like that. And I just remember the old ballpark, old Yankee Stadium, how intense the place was when it was more, the concourses were narrower and louder and so forth. And I always felt it was really intense environment, and I really liked that, even though I was on the other side.
Yeah.
But is the rivalry? I don't get that same feeling now
Yeah.
if I go to games.
Yeah, I don't get that same vitriol feeling
Yeah.
either. I think that's because Red Sox have won 3-4 World Series since our last one. So we're humbled. We have a modicum of respect.
Yeah, it's certainly balanced out in the last 20 years, being 4-1. Since
The feeling I have now is that it's the Astros that really are the bane of the Yankees' existence. Well, again, they keep beating us in the playoffs. In heartbreaking fashion that Red Sox fans might be able to identify with.
How about other people in the group here? Does anybody sense that the rivalry is historical more than current day? Or are there still some signs? I mean, you can still see obnoxious T-shirts for sale outside Fenway Park about the Yankees and so forth, but I don't see that many people wearing them or, making a big deal of it.
I think, Bill, David, it's probably more endemic across all of sports now. You might say it's not just a Yankees Red Sox thing, although it seems more pronounced in this rivalry because of how intense it was. If that makes sense, right? I think you look at back 30, 40 years ago, the rivalries in the NBA were way more intense than they are right now. You look at the Celtics and the Lakers, right? And there was Detroit and the Bulls and all this, even the 76ers, right? And then I'm not sure if it's right, could it be the player relationships are different than they used
certainly
to be?
There's player movement all the time that you didn't used to have.
Yeah, that must be a huge part of it.
And that's part of it. It's definitely, the player movement is part of it because people were attached to Derek Jeter and so on. And there was or they were very anti Derek Jeter or whoever. Another thing that I noticed, when the Red Sox started winning, you would see, and it still bothers me, that people walk around New York City with Red Sox caps on, and they would never do that before that. That was not seen, right? You would not see, I mean, they were as prevalent as Mets and Yankees hats in many ways, I think, in New York City, which is crazy to me. But there are a lot of people who kind of emerged as Red Sox fans. And so the rivalries are, not as one-sided. I think also the balanced schedule, people don't play each other as often. You used to play 19 games against your rival, and now it's like 14. There's a bit more kind of homogenization of the sport in general, and in baseball, where they used to have much more unbalanced schedules. And, so that's I think part of it. There's still some sports rivalries, but Michigan, Ohio State, probably Giants, Eagles. I mean, there's some things that are still pretty strong, but Yankees, Red Sox has probably dropped down. If they both got good again, I mean, part of it is also the stakes are high, right? And
It's been a battle for last place sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a year or so in the 70s, I lived in New London, Connecticut. And I think back in those days, it was split between Yankee and Red Sox fans, and it was more intense in Connecticut than I ever remember it in living in New York for most of my life.
Yeah, there was a dividing line. There was always some discussion about where the line went through the state of Connecticut.
Was it New Haven?
I don't know. Ann, what do you think? Do you remember?
Well, if I remember when I lived in the Groton, New London, Connecticut area, there were a lot of Yankee fans there,
Yeah,
and that's slightly closer to Boston.
yeah.
I think New Haven, certainly was mostly Yankees, but maybe if you went in northern Connecticut, maybe Hartford, maybe I think it was a mix.
There were, I remember seeing a discussion once about that from a bunch of Connecticut folks debating where the line really was, trying to pin it down to actual streets.
Well, where does the Nesson market and the Yes Network market cross?
I don't know, but that's today. Those are these days, or the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. But that would have something to do with it too, I'm
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, part of the rivalry in the 70s, when I really started loving baseball and the Yankees, was that you sensed that the players didn't care for each other, for one another. And I think, was it Tom or Alec was maybe saying, with player movement and, the union is so strong that players feel like they're all, one family, perhaps. But that doesn't address the fan bases. The fan bases shouldn't be affected by that. And I'm wondering if politics has become, so bipartisan, so tribal, that we're now looking to sports to stay away from all that, and we're just looking to be entertained. Just a thought I'm throwing out there. I don't want to get into a big political discussion, but you can't have your whole life always in a rivalry. So maybe people just want to turn on the game and relax.
I kind of miss it in a way, though, because I don't know, just brought a little extra intensity, Okay, maybe every game's the same now, but it was always something extra special, at least from the Boston standpoint. I don't know, when New York was riding its highest, I really don't know if it was just disdain or what, even who cares about those Red Sox fans grumbling all the time.
Well, another big factor though is the playoffs, right? Because we used to have to play and win the division like 1978. That wouldn't happen now, right? You basically have 6 teams, and I mentioned Ohio State, Michigan in football, and that is also going to degrade because it was a big deal and you had to win the division to get into the college football playoff. And now there's 12 teams, they can both go. And that rivalry, I predict, will become much less important than it used to be. Just like Duke and North Carolina, much less important because it was really a limited playoff opportunity back in the day, and you had to win the conference, so you had to win the division. So they were really in your way, and that's not the case anymore.
The Yes Network sometime last week showed a replay of that 1978 Yankees Red Sox game. I happened to catch it from like the 6th inning on, maybe the 5th inning on, and I was still nervous the whole game. I knew what was going to happen, but I was still nervous. But sometimes you don't remember a key play, and I'm so glad I was able to see it again. Everybody that I know talks about Lou Piniella's great play. It was on the single late in the game. The sun was in his eyes. He couldn't see the ball. It bounced in front of him. He was lucky enough to be able to stab it at the last moment and keep Rick Burleson, I believe, was the runner on first base, to keep him on second base. So it was first and second instead of he was the tying run, I believe. So earlier, a few innings before that, though, Piniella made what I think was the game-saving play on a catch. There were 2 men on and 2 outs, and Fred Lynn was facing Ron Guidry, and he drilled a line drive into the right field corner, and Piniella on the run made an unbelievable great basket catch running towards the right field line. I don't know how he got it. I don't know how he caught it. Tremendous for the third out, quelled the rally. And when you watch those old games, I'm sure that Nesson must show old Red Sox games as well. You know, you're struck by, of course, all the lack of production value, and the three men in the booth was great because they were, you know, the voices of my youth, and it was wonderful to relive that. But it was so quaint that's really the word I was looking for. It was just so quaint to watch this game, which was so important to so many fan bases. It's just that. So I'd rather talk about the Boone home run, the 78 game, the Babe Ruth trade. I think we're done with 2004, Bill. Don't you think we've covered that enough?
Maybe. Just Nesson does not often show the 1978 playoff game. I was there. I lived through that one and survived.
Do you remember that Pinella play I'm talking about?
I don't remember it from witnessing it, but I remember hearing people talk about it. Yeah, and seeing things written about it.
Yeah,
there was there was that exorcism just a couple of years ago when the Red Sox and Yankees played each other again, and that time the Red Sox came out on top, but they didn't go further. But at least they won that one game. But,
oh, that wild card game, yes.
Yeah, it was. I remember I was one of the few people that I know of that was at both games, 78 and that one. Susan Waldman was at both of them, and Dan Shaughnessy was at both of them. Beyond that, I don't know.
Cool.
I'm sure there are a few other folks. But.
Yeah, that 78 game, again, watching that replay, Jerry Remy had a terrific game. Another guy I'd pick to break up the no-hitter. He was just such a pesky player. I know he was beloved in Boston.
Yeah, we miss him a lot. I was just watching a game on YouTube a couple of hours ago. I was writing up the game in 2007 when Josh Beckett won his 20th game of the year. The only guy that won 20 games that year in the majors. That was the game before they clinched the place in the postseason. But just watching Don Orsillo and Jerry Remy as the commentators, it was such a great experience. And then, you know, Red Sox have lost a number of people with Tim Wakefield recently, and so for the number of relatively young people.
That's a shame. Yeah.
You know, as you guys are talking about this, it's kind of just thinking about, you know, this whole, is the rivalry as intense? I think the fans, if you're talking about Jerry Remy, you think about Phil Rizzuto, the guys in the booth, who were the guys on the field? And back in the day, the fans were closer to the players in terms of being able to identify with them, right? And then, of course, when they became broadcasters, maybe even more so, because they were like the guys sitting next to you in the living room. Their whole style was like that. Now, as much as I like Michael Kay, would I have lunch with him? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. And I think that's where maybe some of the disconnect is too. It's much more corporatized.
The Red Sox have spent a lot of energy keeping former players on as broadcasters. They haven't been as successful as Jerry Remy in having that connection. He was from the Boston area, which really helped too. But I mean, they had Wakefield, they had Dennis Eckersley, Kevin Youkilis has been doing it the last couple of years, and Kevin Millar has come up from time to time, and they have a number of people. They always now seem to always try to have an ex-player in as the analyst, and I think that helps give a different feel to the broadcast, more of a sort of insider's viewpoint. So what is going to happen this year?
What's going to happen this year in general? Be more
No, with
specific.
with the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Well, if the Yankees can keep their starting pitchers relatively healthy, I think they have a very good chance to succeed. The at-bats so far have been incredible from the Yankee perspective. Anthony Volpe worked to change his swing. He's flattened it out. He looks totally different at the plate, so much more confident. They had an interesting stat the other game. And he got 4 hits the other night, but this was even before that, where he had seen 70 pitches and he only swung and missed twice. And
Wow.
he struck out about 200 times last year. So I think that bodes well for, good contact hitter. And they're all saying that Soto is the guy that's made all the difference, just by example.
Yeah.
If not actual, communicating and helping and teaching. They all watch him in the batting cage and how he goes about his business, and that every pitch matters.
Did Volpe do a lot of work in the off season?
Yeah, he's really flattened out his swing. He's not uppercutting at all. I think he's gonna have close to 40 doubles this year. That's my prediction. Really, really happy. Someone, Alec, talked about how the Verdugo trade wouldn't have happened, 20 years ago. Probably true. He was a player I always liked on the Red Sox. I like those kind of players that seem to try to get the most out of their ability. They have a little bit of swagger. They can back it up. I always admired his at-bats. Always thought he was a good outfielder. I know that, they say chicks dig the long ball, but I always, since I was a kid, I've always loved doubles. Give me guys who hit doubles. I'll take them all day long. You can't always count on a homer. Homer ruins a rally. I'm just joking. But Verdugo's a guy who hits a lot of doubles. I think that they've just improved their defense so much. The bullpen is always terrific. There's a lot people criticize about Brian Cashman, the general manager, but he always puts together a really top-notch bullpen. So I just think if Nestor Cortez in particular and Cole, if they're healthy, I think they'll do very, very well.
When does Cole come back? Maybe June?
Maybe June 1st, but
Yeah.
I always worry that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, except when it comes to pitching injuries. I feel like they never tell you the full story.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but there's certainly a lot more injuries these days than it can't be that players are trying harder, because they always tried hard.
Well, the pitchers in particular, they're maxing out
Yeah.
velocity. I think that's the issue. I don't think it's the pitch clock, or if you can only throw 20 pitches in an inning and then they'll take you out as a reliever and you're getting arm injuries, it's just that max effort.
What I like to see more of is triples. And the Red Sox have a guy now with Jarren Duran, who is so fast on the base path. He might break the stolen base record for the Red Sox if he keeps going at his current pace. But he also he can stretch a single into a triple, not just a double. It seems like.
Yeah. Who's the holder of the Red Sox stolen base record?
I'm trying to remember. Right, I guess it's still Jacoby Ellsbury, but
Like 12 total. What's the record for?
no,
Red
I think
Sox?
it's 70. That's my memory. I'd have to look it up, but my memory is at 70. Not
When you said the
17.
name Jacoby Ellsbury, you saw my reaction, right? Not good.
Well, he changed.
Yes. Well, injuries.
Yeah.
Like Fred Lynn, he was a very fragile player.
Mhm.
But who's a bigger waste of Yankee money, Stanton or Ellsbury? I think Stanton, ultimately.
Stanton is such an enigma. I've never seen a player look so bad and then hit a home run. From pitch to pitch, he looks like, so it must be that it's just swing as hard as he can, and if the ball hits your bat, it might go far. He's a head scratcher. He seemed to be so athletic when he was with Miami, and then he changed his first name, and then he couldn't play the game anymore. It's terrible.
So, according to AI, Harry Hooper is the Boston Red Sox stolen base leader. After him is Tris Speaker, and
maybe they're only counting for the first 20 years of the last century.
That's the career leader.
yeah,
Yeah, we're talking about like day. I think he was talking about season.
One season is what I was
okay.
thinking about.
However, Harry Hooper's a great player.
Yeah. Did
Should be
Tommy
We don't
Harper
talk enough about Harry
was
Hooper.
Tommy Harper ever a Red Sox?
Yes,
Yep.
I think he had the record before Ellsbury.
Okay. Yep. And how do you think the Red Sox are going to do, Bill?
I don't know. I picked them for 80. What I can't to win one more game than they lost. Instead of 81-81, I guess I picked them to be 82-80, just because I thought they were a little. I was being conservative. I hope they win a few more than that, like 20 more, but that's unlikely. But we'll see. I'm surprised so far. I'm pleasantly surprised. They could have won almost any one of these games, and 3-2, they won more than they lost.
I really like that young pitcher you signed, Bayo.
Yeah,
He looks like he's really, really good. But
he is really good. He's pitching tonight.
Tell me your thoughts though about the first baseman, Tristan Casas.
Yeah, he's kind of I don't have all the data in my head and so forth, but I hear them talk about it on the stuff. He's a very unique guy. He has a potential to be something very special, and we'll see how it works out. They say if you don't throw him a fastball, apparently, because I think he's hit something like 25 home runs last year,
right,
in his rookie year, and it was as though he was just getting started. I think people think he might go considerably beyond that if he gets in there, and he has good plate discipline.
Yes.
He just he doesn't strike out very much at all, but it's just a matter of if they throw him nothing but sliders, he may have problems. And that's what they were talking about the first few games this season, is that the opposition was throwing him nothing but sliders. And so he's going to have to adjust. If he thinks he can just live by hitting fastballs, he's going to have to learn to do a little more than that. Yeah. He's fast and he's a decent fielder.
Yeah, he doesn't look very athletic, but I do appreciate his plate discipline. I hope they'll teach him how to go the other way sometimes. With the Fenway Green Monster, that's a great weapon for a big lefty like Yordan Alvarez on the Astros. If he can learn to hit the ball the other way, he'll be fantastic.
Well, apparently, Rafael Devers this year has been working on hitting to left field, and he's already pulled off a couple in spring training. He hit several home runs that direction.
I'm a big Devers fan, and a lot of the reason stems from I used to have the Yankees Sunday home game package, and I was at the game with my brother, a Sunday night ESPN game, and Yankees are winning by a run in the 9th inning, and Chapman comes in, and he was throwing 103 miles an hour. He had his best stuff that night. A guy got on base, and he had Devers down 2 strikes, and Devers hit a ball to left center field that was such a shot. I've seen very, very few in person balls leave the park that quickly. And my brother and I, we just looked at each other and we said, oh my gosh, we better remember this kid's name. He's going to be a great hitter. And so I've always admired him, and I think he works very hard to be a good third baseman as well. I don't see him play every day, but I think Devers is one of the best hitters in the game.
he's been defensively challenged, but he's gotten better at it. And there's hopes for him getting better yet this year. He hit a ball, I think it was last night, that the first baseman speared, but it was almost as though it was hit so hard that the first baseman was picked up and dropped back 20 feet. That wasn't really what happened, but and it was just hit incredibly hard. And they were commenting on television. You could just see it. It's just
Ugh.
What
is
about
the-
this kid, Rafaela in the outfield?
yeah, he remains to be seen, but he's certainly made already a couple of spectacular defensive plays, and he seems to have power. So we'll just see about apparently a good history of plate discipline too. So he's somebody that we're looking forward to hearing a lot more from. I had a nice occasion a couple weeks ago. The Red Sox played 2 games in Santo Domingo against Tampa Bay, I guess. And I went down to see 2 games in the year 2000. They lost to the Astros both games, so I figured, okay, I better go again. It was the first live baseball I'd seen since last year, so it was really a lot of fun to go to the Dominican Republic. And the Red Sox have, I think, 7 of their 25 players are from the Dominican right now, and it was kind of fun to see. And plus, there were people like Pedro Martinez and David Ortiz showed up as well to wave to the fans. Nobody shot Ortiz, which was handy. And it was a fun experience. Well, I went to a meeting of the SABR chapter there, the Juan Marichal chapter. They had a meeting that I think 14 people came to, and that was kind of fun, going to a different SABR chapter meeting. How about some other folks here?
There's one little incident, it's a little funny. I was at a game at Yankee Stadium and the game ended and walked across the street and there was a plainclothes police officer with a Red Sox uniform.
In a whole uniform?
In a uniform, and then they have their badge underneath their shirt.
There was, Perry will probably remember the story. I wrote for the umpires book about in the year 2000 when there were worries about was it 2000? I don't know. The worries that there was going to be some problem for President Bush. And maybe 2001, I guess, shortly after 9/11.
At the World Series, he threw out.
And one of the umpires, one of the Secret Servicemen borrowed a complete umpire's uniform and was out on the field for the pregame ceremonies just to be ready. And one of the few times you've had an umpire on the field with a pistol.
Yeah, there were 7 umpires
Okay.
at the beginning. Yep.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of them, Rico Palazzo.
One of them armed.
Did anybody mistaken this for a Boston Red Sox hat?
Heck no, looks like Dodgers.
Yeah.
It looks like Dodgers. Wow, that's close. They are. It is a Dodger hat. And this is the hat I grew up with. And I grew up with a bunch of Yankee fans. And the neighborhood I grew up in is where Bobby Thompson came from. Graduated school with my mother. And so I was in Manhattan,
Okay.
I guess in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and was doing a book fair at the Armory on 25th and Lex. So after all the dealers had moved in and were setting themselves up now, I took a stroll down to the New York Police Academy to visit the commander there, who had been an instructor for me many, many years before. And I wanted to say hello and talk to him about it. And when I got there, it was after 9/11, so of course they had the lobby well guarded. And the 2 officers were there, and one was calling upstairs to get me clearance to go up. And the other officer and I were making small talk, and I was wearing this hat, and he said to me, is that a Boston, excuse me, sir, is that a Boston Red Sox hat? So I said to him, Are you a New York cop? That will tell you about, you know, what happens over the years when a team is not around since 1957. You know, that's what happens. Anyway,
Could have been a
I'm
Boston
good.
Braves cap.
maybe a Boston Braves.
I was reading that Aaron Boone and Cora are on the hot seat this year. So what do you guys think the chances are that both managers survive this season? I think low, that they both don't get fired.
You think they both will not be rehired?
Well, I think that Boone has to at least get into the World Series or he's gone. I mean, in particular, probably a shorter list than Cora.
I think the feeling with Cora is that if he doesn't, I mean, obviously, if you get into the World Series, it's a whole different thing. But I think some of the feeling is, and I don't know, this is not an informed opinion, this is just a feeling I get, is that he's not that happy with what the tools he's been given. And so he's very popular. I think he's very popular with the players, and he's very popular with the fan base, but he may get a better offer someplace else and choose not to come back. He said a couple of things in spring training about, you know, not being given the tools that he needed. He was a little bit not quite as pointed as that, but close enough.
Now,
How bad would it be for Yankee fans if Cora replaced Aaron Boone?
no, Boone's not going anywhere. I think Cora's a great manager, but Boone just signed a new contract. He's in the first year of this new contract. And I already see him managing differently. Now, I didn't make a lot of it during the offseason when Hal Steinbrenner announced they were doing this big audit from top to bottom of the front office and the organization and how, you know, they deal with analytics and blah, 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 blah. But I can already see Boone, maybe when he negotiated for this new contract, he said, I want to be able to use my gut a little bit more. Obviously, I don't know. I want, you know, the inside story, but the examples that I give you already after 5 games, never in the last 5 years did Boone ever pitch his a relief pitcher, but in particular his closer, 3 days in a row. Clay Holmes already has pitched. He pitched 3 times in 4 games already. He would never have done that. Now, was it because it was against the Astros? None of that. It just, they would have gone by the book, whatever that book says. Also, Oswaldo Cabrera started the season at third base in place of the injured DJ LeMahieu. The Yankees had traded for John Birdie. Nice player, nice veteran player. They traded for him to play third base, but he didn't get there in time for the opening game. And Cabrera was terrific. So you stick with the hot hand. He was terrific again the second day. Anyway, he's gotten the starts in the first 4 games. The Yankees never used to believe in being hot. They would go with whatever the best matchup said on paper, what the algorithms said. But no, I really feel like Boone put Cabrera back in there every day because he was hot and he was producing and he was confident and he was injecting life into the lineup from the 9 hole. Now, Birdie did start at third last night and Cabrera played short, or the night before, I forget, because Volpe had a little stomach ailment and didn't play. But I expect if you're hot, you're going to play. And in the past, they used to go with what the computer said the lineup should be.
So he's more self-confident with a longer contract and feels he can.
Or I think that he asked for some buy-in to go with his gut a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it continues. I think that's how it should be.
So he really did just sign, because Alec just put a note in the chat that said he's in his last year of his contract.
Oh, thank you for that. I thought I knew everything.
Well, I don't know, one way or the other.
I mean, you could say that he's rolling the dice because I think it's because he's like, I have to win this year, and I'm going to, kind of loosen the reins. He seemed very uptight, I think, throughout. I mean, I understand why. I think Stanton is still an albatross in terms of the way the lineup. Actually, the Yankees, the way they're playing now, they kind of remind me of the Red Sox, like a little more aggressive, a little bit better plate discipline, the things that we associate with the successful Red Sox teams, and they have Verdugo. So perhaps there's a bit of a metamorphosis happening. But yeah, that guy, the third baseman, I didn't even know that guy, but he made an unbelievable play against the Astros, I think, on Sunday.
Yeah, I believe he led the National League in stolen bases just a couple seasons ago. Nice little player.
Well, to see 2 or 3 defensive plays by Yankees fielders in a 4-game set is unprecedented since like 2005.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking for Gleyber. I'm looking for Gleyber Torres to have an excellent season. He's in his walk year, which is, as Ricky Henderson will tell you, it's the best motivator a player could have, to be in your walk year. But he's 27. Seems like he's been around forever, and he's still so young. I just feel 27 to 29 is the prime of a player. And I feel like he's a smarter hitter. I feel like he understands what his role is a lot more. I just feel like you watch Gleyber Torres, all-star second baseman this year.
You mentioned Bayo before. I think he's only 23 years old now.
It's amazing. He's got a great changeup.
I was trying to think of something about Tristan Costas too, that somebody asked about him. I've watched him stretch before games sometimes. And he has about, if you ever get a chance to go to a game that he's at, try to watch him. He has these weird things that he does. Those big, gigantic plastic things they have in the dugouts that are filled with ice and water. Eventually, he'll take one of those before the game. And he does just these strange things, the way he picks it up and does these certain contortions with that and other pieces of equipment. He just picks up and uses them as something to exercise off of. It's just odd. And I think he was the one too that used to take off his shirt and lie down in the outfield during the early part of batting practice before the fans came in for whatever reason. But
Crazy.
You guys were talking earlier about the best players of between each franchise and comparing them. It would be fun as well to look at players who have played for both franchises and come up with a lineup like that.
Yeah,
obviously we know about Babe Ruth, but there aren't a ton that come to mind. That would be really top-notch guys. It's interesting.
I'm remembering when I was born in 1963. So in the early 70s, my favorite player was Danny Cater. The Yankees were so bad then, but he was a guy who could hit about 280. So he was my favorite player because besides everyone loved Bobby Mercer, I had to find a different player. And then the Yankees traded my favorite player to the Red Sox for Sparky Lyle, and I was so upset for a short time.
Yeah, okay. You got over that one.
Elston Howard's another one, right? Or no?
Yeah.
There's a lot
Johnny
of
Damon.
Wade Boggs,
Boggs, yeah.
some guy named Clemens.
Okay, yeah. Now we're coming up with several.
Ramiro Mendoza also won a World Series with both franchises.
Johnny Damon.
Yep.
Sure.
Ricky Henderson, the walk year champion, since he changed teams so frequently.
Right. He's
Red
good for
Ruffin.
that immaculate grid.
Red Ruffin played for both.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, there
pitcher.
was people were complaining about him last week. I was at some group and they were complaining about him being a member of the Red Sox Hall of Fame. And because he is. And nobody disputes that he should be a Hall of Famer. But if you compare his stats with the Red Sox compared to his stats with the Yankees, there's no way he should be in the Red Sox Hall of Fame. He was
No.
grandfathered in because they put in everybody that was in the National Hall of Fame. But what he did for the Red Sox before he moved over was not much.
Carl Mays also, I think, played for
Mhm.
both.
There's a surprising number of them over the years, given that theoretically you'd think there would not be.
And the pitchers are better, like Tiant, Ruffing, David Cohn, David Wells,
Mhm.
certainly. So I believe many in common. And our friend Mike Torres, of course.
Sure.
There are players that were on both teams, but we should probably focus on players that were good for both teams, right? Because
That's kind of more what I was thinking. Like who
cup
had
of
very
coffee, right? Who had
Clemens and Boggs, right? Both.
Yeah, I dropped some of that in the chat.
Yeah.
That Clemens.
Well, Tom, why don't you do some research and write a story for SABR Journal?
I like it. I like it.
Was Elston Howard the catcher in the 67 World Series team?
Yeah.
Don is saying yes.
Yeah, that sounds right. Here's an interesting one. And Bill, Red Sox have always had, it's a little bit off the beaten path. Red Sox have always had the first base dugout, I believe, at Fenway, right?
Yeah.
The Yankees, I recently learned, did not always have the first base dugout. In fact, it was like in the 40s, 1946, 47, they switched. They had originally the third base when Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig played. Somewhere, and it wasn't because a new stadium was constructed. They switched dugouts. And it made me start thinking, what goes into management's decision to be on the first base or the third base side? And it's almost 50-50 if you look at across the league. It is, and there's almost no research around this. I wonder, with the Red Sox always being on first base and they never switched, just one of those quirks of baseball, right? I don't know how many other teams have switched over the years, but I watched Pride of the Yankees not too long ago, and you'll see that Lou Gehrig the whole team was on the third base side of the field when he was making that speech.
I mean, the way Fenway Park is built, I think it was intended that way from the beginning, because the clubhouse, I mean, it's a so much better clubhouse on the home side than for the visitors.
I guess the Yankees were so bad in 1967 that they basically gave Elston Howard to the Red Sox during the season, which I did not realize until just now. But I was too young to
He was old by then.
He was.
But hey, Ron Klimkowski, who could argue with that?
There's all kinds of research coming out in the chat. I see
Yes.
here. Yeah.
And I always assume that you, as the home team, you would want to be on the first base side, just so you don't have to run all the way back from, first.
Right.
But I just assumed any home team that was using the third base dugout, just because of better clubhouse or the facilities or the training room or the whatever technology they use, was just better on that side for whatever reason that it was constructed. I don't know.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that most batters are right-handed and you get a better view of them if you're on the first base side?
That could be as well.
I have no idea. I never thought about it before.
When you're a kid and you ask these baseball questions of your father, and he says, well, it's a long run all the way from when you get thrown out at first all the way back to the third base dugout. Let them run.
Yeah.
My
dad,
lifelong Yankee fan, would say it was so that after the home team hit a home run, they just kept running past home plate into the dugout. They didn't have to turn around.
Well, and of course, the places that they put bullpens nowadays, there's no rhyme or reason. It seems like they almost always, oh, we forgot, we need bullpens. Let's find a place for the bullpens. Because God forbid you should, take away valuable advertising signage territory.
And they pay a lot of money for those architects.
That
Well, back when they used
2007
to play
game
Dayton-
I was watching earlier on YouTube, one of the bullpens was on the field, in foul territory, obviously, but Ellsbury ran and he made a catch in crashing over the Red Sox pitchers, knocking over a couple of chairs in the bullpen.
Yeah, there's only, I think, 2 left that are that's not great for the players.
Yeah.
Right. And
I just-
Oakland's gonna disappear soon enough. we think.
Tropicana Field.
Right.
Yeah, Wrigley Field was like that for a long time. They just recently changed that.
And the Giants used to have them on the field as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the Red Sox playing in Oakland last couple nights, their attendance went from 4,000 up to 6,000.
Must be all Boston.
Right,
native.
well, that's what they were saying. Basically, it added more things. I've never been to the Coliseum yet. I really wanted to go out there this year, but schedule with something with my son didn't work out so well. So otherwise, I would have been out there this weekend. But if they're there again next year, I think I'm going to try to make it.
It's a shame if you're an A's fan, what's going on. Terrible. But I guess Major League Baseball is allowing these things to happen.
For sure. If you're
What
an
are
old
they gonna
enough,
do for 3 seasons?
if you were a 150-year-old A's fan, you would have seen them move from Philadelphia to Kansas City and then to Oakland and now Las Vegas. Maybe. I don't know what's going to happen with Las Vegas because
It's at best a 50-50 proposition. I
Yeah.
think they'll wind up in Las Vegas. I think Sacramento's going to try to get them next year, and they're going to try to keep them.
Oh.
That's my.
Well, I know the Tropicana in Vegas they've closed. They're ready to be demolished. Something's going to be built there for somebody. But I see Don had written about Larry Lucchino.
yeah,
He coined the phrase "the evil empire."
right. Well, he was a good salesperson in terms of knowing the right thing to do to sort of boost things up there. I haven't heard I know he was a 2-time cancer survivor, but I don't know if that's what he actually died from.
They said kidney cancer, I believe.
All the reports I read today, I didn't see one yet, but he twice he'd gone through cancer treatment and when cured, but
I believe he was with the Orioles and helped
yes,
vision the whole Camden Yards
Yep.
experience. And with the Red Sox, was he also part of the group envisioning those Fenway Green Monster seats?
yeah, he went on to San Diego from Baltimore, and then to Boston, and he brought Janet Maria Smith, the architect who had worked on Camden Yards. He brought her up to Boston, and now she works for the Dodgers. But
So did he do? He was with the Padres when Petco Park went up.
I don't know about that part of it, but he was there for a few years. I don't know the time of it. Yeah, if he died of kidney cancer, that's like 3 times to get that. With Tim Wakefield and his wife, Tim Wakefield died of brain cancer, and then like just a few weeks later, his wife died of pancreatic cancer. And you sort of wonder what were they exposed to something that just affected the two of them in different ways? I don't really know, but Larry was as a 2-time cancer survivor, he was the head of the basically the connection to the Jimmy Fund for a few years there, helping to maintain the Red Sox connection to the Jimmy Fund. And I think he was the actual chair of the trustees.
Wasn't he involved in the Worcester?
Still,
He
Park
was one of the
as well.
owners of the Worcester
Yeah.
Red Sox, yeah.
Yo,
I
yeah.
lived in Rhode Island, and they snuck out of town with the insider deal that he orchestrated to go to Worcester.
Well, it wasn't entirely they snuck out of town. Pawtucket had a chance to make a bid, and they didn't. I mean, they was kind of soured. Not just Pawtucket, the state of Rhode Island. They may have felt a little burned by all the money that they put into Kurt Schilling's
Agreed.
effort for there, and that didn't work out. They lost a lot of money, so I think they may have soured on that kind of connection. It's hard to know.
Well, I worked for the state treasurer up there at the time, and I was trying to push him. But one of the things that I think was definitely the case was that Pawtucket is 1 mile from Massachusetts. So
Mhm.
a lot of people in Rhode Island would not see I mean, I lived in Providence, so I was like, let's do this. And of course, a lot of their fan base was from Attleboro or places like that. And, you know, like half of the fans were from Massachusetts. So Rhode Island people in Newport subsidizing a stadium in Pawtucket was not terribly popular. But of course, you guys may not follow this, but in the last 2 years, because the Paw Sox left, they're doing this ridiculous soccer stadium thing in Pawtucket, which is a financial Ponzi scheme that will, I think, fall apart. So they didn't do it because of Schilling. Then they, you know, now they're going to do this other deal because they didn't do the Paw Sox deal. So it's bad luck in Rhode Island as usual.
Wasn't there a lot of housing and a couple of schools going in there too? I don't know. I haven't been there.
Yeah, the train was gonna, you know, they're gonna have the train station, they're gonna make more housing and urban development, but the people that are running the franchise haven't opened their books up, and I don't think they've raised the money that they were supposed to. So, I mean, the governor, I think they're trying to keep it going for the time being, but I don't think the people are actually running the project. They're not Lucchino, like they're not, you know, I think as substantive. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Right.
Hopefully it works out, but
I think the city of Worcester made a big push too, and I think it's paid off for them.
well, it's a lot of money. I don't know. I read things that said that, you know, I mean, these things are supposed to prove themselves over 30, 40 years. And like, we don't really know. Like, I
Yeah.
think probably COVID aftermath helps Worcester, helps Providence relative to Boston at the margin, that people can live in these cities that are further away. So I do think there's an urban renewal about 100 miles away from the big cities. So they're probably benefiting, but I'm not sure it's ballpark related.
Mhm.
I also don't think the Woo Sox is an appropriate moniker since it's Worcester does not have 2 O's in it.
Yeah. Well,
It should be the War Sox, as far as that will not happen.
they don't want to say "Woe Sox." That would not be too good. And they seem to be an interesting franchise, though. I love Pawtucket myself. I love going there, but it's a nice ballpark in Worcester. It's just, I don't know, I like the old-fashioned aspect of Pawtucket.
I don't know if anybody's been up to Portland to the Sea Dog Stadium, but my mother's partner was the designer of that, which is a nice place, I think. Nice, good place to see a baseball game.
Yeah, I went up there last year to see the Savannah Bananas play. I thought I was going to hate it, and I really enjoyed the game. It's they just over the top.
Did you catch a foul ball?
No, I didn't. But one of the
Wouldn't
things I
that be an
really
out?
enjoyed is they have one of these players that plays on stilts, and he really does play on stilts. But then when he came to bat, they had to bring out a step ladder type of thing for the umpire to stand on, so
Funny.
the umpire could be up at the appropriate height to call balls and strikes.
Now they're ready to pitch to Aaron Judge. They're getting
Yeah,
used to.
yeah.
Oh. How does he slide, the player on stilts?
Probably doesn't, I guess. He didn't fall over when either for some reason, but I guess
He's
it was-
basically like a productive Giancarlo Stanton, then. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's probably faster.
Yes, right. That would be a good promotion, right? Okay.
Instead of the flash against the fan, we have Giancarlo Stanton against the stilt player.
Hmm.
Stanton versus Stilton.
Watch Stanton hit 2 homers tonight just to show us.
One guy that you didn't mention in the Red Sox roundup, I think, was O'Neill. Like he hit this. I was at the game, and when you go to the game and someone does something, you always like exaggerate it in your mind if you don't go all the time. And I don't see the Red Sox a lot, but he crushed one on. I mean, he hit a home run, I think, on opening day, which I think was the 5th year in a row.
5
And-
years in a row, his
And then
opening
he
day.
and he hit a home run on Sunday. I was telling my friend about it, and he literally homered while I was talking. And the
Hmm.
guy looks like a real stud. And I think he was stolen, but from the Cardinals, from what I could read in the transaction.
Now he's been very impressive so far. I guess he has a bodybuilder's physique because his father was Mr. Canada in the weight, yeah, whatever, that's called
Yeah.
weightlifting category or something like that. So apparently he has quite a physique, but he's relatively small too. So he's and he's fast. He
And
really
he's a
moves
good
fast.
outfielder. He's a very good outfielder.
Yeah, yeah. That's-
Yeah, he could hit 35 homers.
He's
Good
going to be
player.
exciting. I don't think anybody expected. We're just learning about him, really.
The last
But I-
couple of years, he had some injuries,
Mhm.
and there was some incident last year where the manager didn't like his effort running the bases, which he might have been favoring a leg injury, but
Mhm.
still he got called out publicly by Marmol, very young Cardinals manager. So that might have been a little friction, a reason
Yeah.
for him not to be with the team anymore. But O'Neill's going to do great. I think Story, if he's healthy, he's going to also, he's a very good hitter.
Yeah.
I think maybe you'll do better than your 82 wins projection.
I was trying to be conservative.
But if the bullpen can not blow a lot of saves,
Yeah, their bullpen is okay, I think, but I don't know. Yeah, that's actually they got some okay guys there. We'll see. It's starting pitching holding up is the main thing, I think, and who knows?
David, what are the Yankees waiting for in not signing Jordan Montgomery back yet?
I
Go ahead.
I don't think that Montgomery wanted to come back. I think the Yankees
Really?
did him wrong.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I agree. No one is saying, "Hey, Jordan Montgomery's pitching tonight. Let's go to the game." But boy, in today's game, a dependable, reliable 5-6 inning guy, quality start, makes 30 starts, is such a valuable commodity. I don't understand why, if they were so high on Bader, why they let Bader get away so easily as well. Another injury prone outfielder. But I maybe this isn't true because business is business, but I also feel like if the Yankees were to sign Montgomery, they'd be admitting they made a mistake. And people don't like to do that, right? They don't like to admit they made a mistake.
What about all the other teams? I mean, it's sort of
Right.
weird.
Well, I guess with Boris, he was holding out for a big
Yes.
contract, a long-term contract. Snell didn't get it either. Owners have been known to collude, but
Yeah,
I also feel like long-term contracts for pitchers, unless they are the elite of the elite, is a thing of the past. I always liked Montgomery. He pitched well for the Yankees. I never understood that trade, even though I liked Bader when I started to watch him play every day. Whoever taught Bader how to play the outfield should be an outfield coach for a major league team, because Bader does everything technically perfect, even when no one's on base. The way he gets in position, always to throw the ball when the ball's still up in the air. I really like that. But I think if you were to ask the Yankees, they're happy that Stroman, they're happy that they would rather have Stroman than Montgomery, and for the contract they were able to give Stroman, I think he'll be a very valuable pitcher for them.
it really seemed like Boris misread the market here, just somehow.
Yeah. He's always come out the winner, and I think he expected to do so again.
If you're talking
Well,
about,
the
are you
Korea-
talking about
the-
Scott Boras, right? The scout, I mean, the agent.
Yes.
You know, David, when you cited the term quality start, that was a term that was never heard of years ago. And it's a term that you hear frequently today at every level, you know, with the broadcast booth and so forth and so on. And Scott Boras tells an interesting story about that term. He told it to the SABR audience out in Long Beach, I think it was, at our national convention. And the story was that I think the pitcher was Kevin Brown, and he was at his free agency year, and he had collapsed in his win-loss record, so forth, in his ERA. So he calls in his minions. Scott Boras does. He calls in his minions and he says, "We're gonna do something here with Kevin Brown. We got to look very closely and see if we can find anything that's positive because he's coming up on his free agency year." So gave it to his people, and a couple of days later, this young fellow walks in, one of his guys, and he says, "I think I found something." He says, "What's that?" He says, "Well, if he didn't have to pitch into the 7th inning, he's great." And from the 7th inning on, it's terrible. So Scott Boras invented the term quality start. That was his pitch.
So he's
That was
ruined
his-
baseball for many reasons.
That was his pitch. His pitch was, but he's got quality starts, and that was that was the origin of the term. And we just all, just immediately just take it, understand it, what it means.
We're gonna have to revise that because people don't pitch 6 innings anymore.
Oh.
They don't even pitch 5. I mean,
Yeah,
I
now it's
one of the worst rules that's still in existence is the 5-inning starting pitcher win rule, because it's absurd. When somebody pitches 4 2/3, they have to give it to somebody else, regardless of whether they pitch a third of an inning. And there are a lot of these cheap wins that get handed out, particularly now because people pitch 4 2/3 or whatever it is. So,
I was getting excited last night. Tanner Houck was pitching for the Red Sox, and I think at the end of the 3rd inning, he had only thrown 34 pitches. And I was saying, wow, maybe he'll pitch a complete game. It didn't happen, of course. But
yeah, I think the average pitch is, I think about it like 4 per batter, 4 batters per inning. So it's like 16 is kind of a good round number for the number of pitches in an inning. And people don't pitch more than 112. And Justin Verlander would pitch more, but like Garrett Cole maybe, but like there's only a few of those guys who would even approach 110. So, 9 times 12 is, I mean, it's very difficult. They're just very few complete games anymore. And quality starts would have to be revised down to like 4 innings or something, right?
What was the last game you saw where 2 pitchers went 9 innings, winning and losing?
how about looking back at stats from 100 years ago when a team would have 3 pitchers on the roster that each had 30 wins, but not wins, games, complete games. That's what I'm trying to say.
The last game that I saw where 2 pitchers went 9 innings was during the SABR convention in Seattle. And Jamie Moyer, and I forget who the opposite pitcher was. They went 9 innings each, and the game was a 1-0 game. And I remember thinking, Seattle must have known SABR was in town.
The thing I remember about that game was it was a night game, and when we left the park to go home, it was still light out.
1 hour and 56 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, game 7 of the 91 World Series, Jack Morris went 10 innings. I wonder how Smoltz probably went very, very far in that game. I don't know exactly. I'm sure it'll pop up on the chat soon.
Well, and the player careers aren't being extended because they're pitching, at fewer innings at a time either. That's the irony. you know. You had guys back then pitching more innings and having longer careers.
Yeah. And jobs in the off season.
Yeah.
It's all related.
Well, you guys might have seen the story the other day about who's the next to 300, who's the next to 500 homers, who's the next to 3,000 hits, but it's quite possible there won't be another 300 game, right? Of the three, that seems like the most unlikely, right? Because the best pitchers now, they maybe get like 16 wins or something like that, you know? And so, as you guys were talking about, pitchers, it used to be they would pitch 36 starts, right? Like I would say there's 4.5 starters, and the good pitchers pitch 36 starts, and they would have like 27 decisions, and Tom Seaver would win 21 of those decisions, right? But now they don't pitch 36 starts, they pitch 32, and they get taken out earlier, so they get like 22 decisions, and they go like 15-7. So 300 is elusive, I think.
But they get paid $1 million per start. The top ones.
That's true, but I think the next innovation in baseball is that we won't have starters long run, right? That you'd be better off having 10 guys that could throw, you know, and were versatile and could get people out.
That's how I managed my son's little league teams. 6-inning games, I had 6 pitchers.
And how did it go?
We won many a championship.
There you go.
Made a lot of parents happy too.
Right, but I think the Tampa Rays are getting close to having that kind of team.
That sounds very similar to Brian Kenny's concept of the opener, which is to use a pitcher very early in the game for just 1 or 2 innings, and then bring in a long reliever or a couple of, you know, middle length relievers, and just keep switching them out that way, but not to have somebody go deeper than 2 or 3 innings at most.
The
So
accepted wisdom now among commentators seems to be you can't let a batter see a pitcher 3 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the year that Ted Williams hit 406, I think he hit 5 something against guys his 4th time through the order. Right.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, the same as same season. DiMaggio's 56 game hitting streak. I believe he only saw 27 starting pitchers during that streak.
Right.
I made that number up. Nobody put it in the chat. The real number, please.
Had you read that, Tom, someplace?
The Ted Williams one, yes.
Yeah. I've never seen
I've got to
that.
find it, but yep. Yep. And also, yes, the number of pitchers faced. So if to extend this argument, right, are we ever going to see another hitter with 3,000 hits again? Or, you know,
Altuve, I think, has a good chance.
Yeah.
He's a little older than I thought. I think he's 32 years old, but he doesn't walk much, so he has a good chance. I'm going to guess he has 2,200 hits. I'm going to guess. And another 5 or 6 years, I think he has a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's going to be, we're going to have 500 home run hitters. I just don't think we're going to have guys that get a lot of hits.
So we're eventually going to have a conversation about a 500 home run guy whose lifetime average is like 220 as a Hall of Fame candidate, right? I mean, Stanton's not going to be one. I thought a couple of years ago he might be, but I don't think he's getting there. But eventually there's going to be somebody like that, and it's going to be kind of outrageous.
Yeah, Sheffield's not getting any love at all. He's got over 500 homers. And I think his average was much higher than we'd think. He was quite a feared hitter. Yeah, I don't see Stanton being a Hall of Famer. He's not going to win any more MVPs. If the Yankees were to go on a run and win a couple World Series, and he has some great performances in the postseason, that's his only shot.
That's a low chance, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was an article in Athletic the other day that you guys might have seen this, but there's no one active who has 500, 3,000, or 300, right? Which is the first time that's happened in 15 years when Cabrera retired. So it's quite rare. I'll drop the article in the chat, but yeah, there's not it's not imminent for some of these things. It's going to be a while.
Remember years and years ago reading Natural History magazine. Of course, the editor was Stephen J. Gould, who appears in Ken Burns' documentary briefly. And he was describing evolution he was a great baseball fan, of course, and he describing evolution by talking about Joe DiMaggio, how you mentioned the 56 game hitting streak, and how DiMaggio, would be moving along, but in today's game, he would be facing much different type of pitching. He'd be facing a fresh pitcher every 3 innings. So it would be a different ball game. He wouldn't be a Tyrannosaurus anymore.
Well, the article said that Freddie Freeman was the most likely to get 3,000 because he's the furthest along, but it's a 50-50. And then Stanton was the most likely to have 500 since he has like 410. So, but the 300 wins unless Verlander gets an arm transplant. I guess he's maybe got a chance, but who knows?
I think we'll have a new saves leader before we have a 300 game winner.
The save statistic is more dubious than the win statistic, which are both dubious, though, right? Wouldn't you agree? Like in terms of like who gets credit for certain things. But to your point about when do we bring in the relievers, I mean, I guess do relievers get paid by saves anymore? I think they don't. I think they're the only relievers who get paid. You think? Maybe.
Yeah. But I would bring in my relievers, my high leverage relievers, to face the other team's meat of the order, regardless of what inning it is. That, to me, that's your high leverage situation.
Right. That's when you need them. Right.
Yeah. But I give credence to those who say getting the last 3 outs is much different. That it's a different mindset to get the last 3 outs in a game. History seems to prove that correct.
Well, if you have Mariano Rivera, it's correct. I don't know. I guess I would say I think relievers other than him, I think, are generally overrated in history.
Yeah, that's why they move around so much, right? When's the last time some middle inning reliever stayed with a team for 12 years? They play on 8 different teams in 12 years. They're just expendable.
Bob Turley.
Bob Turley.
I'm guessing.
I wrote about him in my Yankees book in the 1950s.
Before your time.
People said Bob Turley would walk the bases loaded and then strike out the side. That he'd throw 200 pitches in a game.
He created high leverage situations. But yeah, you look like a Chapman. Even the guys that we think of as like, I mean, Chapman has his own baggage, but Kenley Jansen, Hader. I mean, whatever, the teams don't value them, right? Even though those are the guys that people think are the best, and they move around.
Yeah, Kimbrel's been
Craig
on
Kimbrel.
several teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any more comments about the Yankees, Red Sox, or anything else?
No one wants to say anything about the Mets, who have not won since, I don't know, July or whenever that was. My friends are all Mets fans. I grew up on Long Island, so all my friends are Mets fans. I'm not, but I feel a little bit of twinge on their behalf.
Well, it's only 4 games.
Yeah, but you lose to the Tigers. I mean, I think the first game they got one hit, I think, was a home run or whatever. And
Well, in the long run, things even out.
When I moved from New York, I moved to Pennsylvania, not too far from the Delaware River. So the team that I would go to see was in Trenton. It was a brand new stadium, and I went to go see there in the early 90s. And they had some kid on the field. Well, they first were a Tiger affiliate. Then they became a Red Sox affiliate. And I started to see this kid by the name of Garcia Parra. And I became a Red Sox fan. Easy for a former Brooklyn Dodger fan.
I thank you for inviting me to the meeting tonight. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was terrific. And Bill, likewise.
Thank you, Bill and
Thanks.
David.
Good conversation. Thanks.
I hope your team wins tonight, whoever you're rooting for.
Well, I think my team's gonna be rained out,
Okay, so you can't lose.
right?
Yeah, there's that.
Okay,
I root like Bill. I root for the umpires. They're my favorite team.
right to Perry.
Yeah, I don't think the Mets are going 0-5 tonight.
Well, thank you all so very much
Okay.
for conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.